I'd like to call to order the Madison County Board of Education meeting for January the 26th. Ms. Cobb, would you read our vision, please?
Sure. Madison County Schools, in partnership with the community, strives to equip educators and students with the skills to lead by example, develop and speak with a unique voice, and explore their academic curiosity to make a positive impact on our community and world.
Thank you. Next is item number 3, to approve our minutes. Does anybody have any questions about the minutes from the January 12th meeting? If not, can I get a motion then to approve the minutes of the January 12th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Rutherford, second by Ms. Coyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is to approve and review the revised working budget.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
Do you need a stool, Mr. Wood?
Good morning.
I hope not.
I'm just kidding.
All right. So you received in your packet last week a copy of the draft budget and the revised working budget. So we'll kind of go through this. There weren't a lot of changes in the working budget, but one of the items that we've been looking at over the past couple of months, and we talked about at the previous meeting, our investments and how we've been able to get much better rates. So the biggest area that we made changes in there was to increase the investment revenue. You'll notice that on page 2. We also had to increase the utility tax revenue based on current collections. We've had some really cold weather, some really hot summer, and it's driven that up a little bit above what we had expected, so we did adjust that revenue as well. Medicaid revenue, you know, that kind of trends. We did get our final settlement out, our big settlement on that. So it was just a little bit higher than what we had projected after their final cuts on that. So we did make adjustments in there. In all, what we looked at, then went through the budget and found areas that we had some increased expenditure, most of it inflationary items. You know, the inflation jumped a little quicker than we expected. So some of our transportation parts, tires, lubricants, we had increased those for the working budget, but we needed to put just a little bit more in there. We've had a few issues, a few buses that we need to have some extra repairs on. So, you know, we just had a few things in the budget that we offset that with. And then the main thing we did is we went and restored a little more of the contingency. You know, when we went into this budget, we were looking at, in order to balance the budget, using $1 million of contingency to start out with this working budget. And after we take care of the other supply areas and things we needed, we were able to actually put back $650,000 towards the contingency, so that we didn't have to dip into it as far, and to prepare for the next few years. We'll make some, I'll note some things as we go through that the reason why we want to keep that where it's at. So very minor changes, but there were things that were needed. That'll also help us with some of our future projects that we know that we're required to put our own funds into with some of our construction projects in order to maintain our bonding on those. Any questions on the working budget?
I have one question.
Sure.
What about CSEP? Have they told us when they're going to stop with the buses?
They have not communicated
anything?
with me at this point on when they're going to stop paying that. It is, you know, it's $285,000 for the year, so it is a decent chunk. I keep preparing for that, but as of right now, communications, what few I have had, we should have it next year, but I'm not projecting it after that.
Is there anything that we get from them that gives us they need to give us so much notice of when they're going to pull these funds back?
I think in our agreement with them, I think all they're required is a 30-day, but we're in contact with them pretty regular, and as of right now, they don't foresee that next year is going to be an issue.
Any other questions about the revised working budget? So if not, if I can get a motion to approve the 2022-2023 revised general working budget in the amount of $122,231,467.81.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Cobb,
Second?
second by Mr. Rutherford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, to look at the 23-24 draft budget.
All right, so just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what it takes to do a budget. So there are several pieces that we have to have in order to really do a budget. Enrollment, AADA, school staffing levels, our property assessments, our SEEK funding, our local effort requirements, our December 1st child counts, inflationary impacts, and then what our new retirement rates are for our employees. So, we talk about it, but I actually sat down and started going through it, and of all those items, what we actually know as of today for this draft budget, we know our current enrollment, we know our December 1st child count because it just happened, and we know what our retirement rates are going to be next year. Those are the pieces that we actually know to do this budget. So how do we kind of get to where we are? We do a whole lot of trending, a whole lot of projections. I've got a spreadsheet to use to project SEEK, but as we go through this, you'll see that that's a little harder for this coming year than it has been in the past. So we use a whole lot of trends, whole lot of historical data. I've got data going back to the early 2000s. So we try to use all those. If you're not familiar with the December 1st child counts, that's our special needs population. And basically on December 1st, they take the child counts. Next year will be paid on the students we have this year. So you're always lagging on that, and when you have expanded needs in your district, then the funding to take care of those is always lagging, and the board makes sure that we have funds in our general fund to offset that because it lags a year in time. So with that, that's kind of where we're at. This budget's always an interesting one because it's a whole lot of trending. In this budget, the SEEK base, I'm using the $4,100 SEEK base. Now, if you remember in the biennium, they approved to adjust it $100 for the biennium for each year. They haven't put out the numbers yet. They can take it away. They can give it and they can take it away. So kind of want to wait till we see that. Using a flat line on our AADA, and here's what I was talking about with that we're using 2019 numbers. We've been using those for 4 years now. That's what we've been paid off of. The calculations were dropped because we went in a pandemic. So trending that is a lot more difficult because how do you compare that over the past 2 years with pandemic? That significantly affected our attendance rates. So, and the state kind of tweaked their calculation of AADA for this year. So I did not attempt to make a projection on that at this point. Our early numbers that we've done with some of the early state reporting, it could be down a little bit. It could be up. We're a little too early in the game to know that. So I did not attempt to make any changes in that. No changes in local property tax revenue in this budget. No projection was made on property assessments on our own. No increase in motor vehicle taxes for this, and I kind of flatlined utility taxes based on history. of kind of where we've been, because, we talk about that when it always depends on usage every year. So kind of looked back and said, okay, this is a good starting point, especially for this budget. In here, you will see that there's a decrease in the classified retirement rate. It went from 26.75% to 23.34%, so that does help us in the budget. I've got some more notes as we get a little closer down there that I'll go over that. No additional teaching staff above where the levels we're at right now. A little too early to know all of that. At this point, we'll start our early meetings projecting that next month with the schools and looking at all of the allocations. Does include money for our 10 new buses. We have to keep our fleet rolling. It takes 10 each year to stay on track, so we do have to keep funding that. We're not projecting to use any of our capital funds. Those are building funds that you have to, in order to use them to cover general fund expenses, there's certain ones you could cover, but you have to apply to the state for that. We're not projecting doing that. This budget does have us dipping into our contingency, so just be mindful of that. So we'll just kind of start and go through here. If you start on page 1, there at the top, I told you with the working budget, we increased the contingency back up a little bit to offset some of our costs that were going to cause us to dip into it this year, with our interest revenue being up. We brought that back up, so that number there on the first page, the unassigned balance, you'll see that we are bringing that from our working budget, what we anticipated ending, to being our starting for next year. Moving on down, like I said, no property tax revenue increase in this budget. Our assessments are unknown at this time. Moving a little further down the page, utility tax, you see that it's a little lower than what we have this year, but the number that we picked there is kind of a good historical starting point, and then we make adjustments based on usage. Moving over to page 2, down towards the bottom of the page, right there you'll see the increased amount in the working budget, but then you'll see it's decreased for next year. I kind of had to look at this at I don't really know what rates will be next year. I hope rates will stay up. I hope we'll continue to be able to invest at the rates we are and bring in returns off of our money. But I tried to pick a safe number and as we spend some of our building funds and other things on projects, that kind of affects how much we have available to put into investments as well when we're holding those as projects in. So I want to be a little conservative with that because, again, I don't know what rates will do. I'm hoping they'll stay near what they're at now. If it keeps trending and stays where it is, then we will adjust those as we move through different budget cycles. Because remember, we have 2 more cycles beyond this one. Moving over to page 4, I talked about SEEK, that I did not change to the 4,200 just yet. And yes, we have been paid at the 2019 AADA on our students for the past 4 years. And I didn't want to make too many assessments on this because right now we just don't have enough information to know what our local effort would be, if there's any increased local effort next year or equalization reductions. So like I said, we're going to leave it flat for next year at this early stage in the game. And we should have numbers from Kentucky Department of Education in May. When we do the tentative, we will have they have to give us a tentative projection at that point. So we'll have a little harder numbers from them about what they're thinking, and we'll move from there.
Mr. Woods, can you, and maybe for some of our students in the room, can you give us a helicopter view? How do they determine the AADA number that they use for this?
So the AADA is adjusted average daily attendance. It's based off attendance rates. So if your attendance decreases significantly in your district, it affects your funding.
Right. So is it an annual average or?
It is an annual, yeah. They give us a few adjustments for severe weather and some other things. They give you a few adjustments in that calculation, but not many. I know Mr. Neely can speak to that better because he gets to make those calculations, at least the numbers for the state. His department sends those out, but yeah, it's attendance driven. So it starts with your enrollment and then it looks at days that children are in the seats across the district.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on through, take you to page 6. There's your CSEP that you asked about, like I said, potentially sunsetting. We might, looks like probably get at least another year out of it at this point, but if they tell us something else, you know, if they seem to be moving faster along and they come back before June 30th and tell us different, then we'll adjust that at that time. Moving down the page, you will see the indirect cost transfer significantly down. So that is funds that they give us to manage the ESSER funds. They allow us to take a percentage for administering the ESSER funds. As we spend those, it's a direct percentage. So as you spend it, that's going to go down. So you see that we've got 1 year left of ESSER funding, and we are going to take a sizable hit because we've exhausted our ESSER funds, as we should have. We were to be spending it over the 3.5, 4-year period, basically. So yes, we will be bringing in less money there. So that is something we have to be mindful of and is one of the big factors in the reduction in revenue in this budget. Move on now, we'll kind of jump into expenditures, starting on page 8. The draft budget does include approximately $668,000 in salary and benefit expenses to cover projected experience steps. And this is built on our current salary schedules. This budget, you will notice that the different benefit lines do show reduced amounts, and that is because of the decrease in the CERS rates. That was approximately a $122,000 reduction in our budget. So that did help out in the budget quite a bit. I was surprised. Usually they raise the rates, but they dropped our contribution rate for this next year. Overall, I just kind of looked at where we were in our working budget, compared it to where I thought we would be next year. Again, just made some minor changes throughout. I gave you all notes throughout the rest of this. If you move on over to page 13, you will see there that in order to balance this budget, it is going to take $1.6 million of our contingency to make this budget work, based on factors that we know today. Any revenue that might come in above what we're expecting would be used to offset that gap. Because that is a big hit to have to dip in that far to maintain the levels that we're at right now. Any questions on that so far?
I may be jumping way ahead,
Okay, you're fine.
but our lunchrooms, we've had the free lunches. When does that run out?
We are currently signed up for, I think we've got 2 more years left on our CEP agreement. So we would have next school year and the following school year, based on what we were signed up for.
Yeah, and you may have, let me chime in on that just a little bit. You may have seen, there's been some national headlines about the free lunch for all program ending. During the pandemic, federal lunch program did provide free lunches for everyone that basically that missed school. but we're on a different program than that. We're on that community eligibility program. That community eligibility program is still alive, and districts have to qualify for it, they have to apply for it and qualify for it. That program's still there. We're still a part of that, and so.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would be, with the way that works, it would be probably towards the end of next school year. We would be applying so we know ahead of time before that final year runs out. That's how the process works on those.
Okay.
And they usually do like a 4-year window.
So when do we actually see the ending of all the ESSER funding?
So September 30th of 2024. Yeah, we have to have everything encumbered, which means we have to have an obligation for it. And then we have till January of '25 to have the funds liquidated out.
Okay.
So really, that period is just basically paying the bills between that period and doing reporting.
Okay. That's the reason, like, in the student support services and the salary, I know that we've used some ESSER funding for some of those, that those numbers aren't greatly changed yet.
Yeah.
It won't happen until after
Yes.
ESSER funding runs out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions through the general fund portion?
I don't.
All right, so kind of moving on, starting on page 14, that's district activity funds. Those are funds that are raised by the school and swept to the school. I've told you all before, basically, we try to use like a prior year budget or whatever. It's not actuals because we don't know how much money they're going to bring in to sweep over. And it's things like donations and other things like that that are given to the school each year. So and it's a carryover budget to start with. So that one, the budget is what it is. It's just we have to have a budget in there for the state. They require that. So we just put a budget in there. All the schools know to look at their actual year-to-date columns. That's what they work off of for their expenditures. If you move on down, page 16, starting on 17, I apologize. Fund 25, that's student activity funds. If you remember, that just started 2 years ago, that we have to report like all the clubs and the athletic groups and everything, the money that they raise individually has to be put on our books now. That's all that is. We're not required to budget that, so that's why you did not. It's included as a fund in this because it's an annual fund, but no budget is in there. Moving on down, page 21 starts our capital outlay. We won't know that number until we get our AADA and we get our tentative seek. So it is budgeted at what we have next year with just a small adjustment for interest.
When do you normally get that information?
It will be tentative, will probably be late April before we get that. I'll probably get it, honestly, if I get it about a week before the budget is due to be presented to you all, I'm doing really good. So, and we have to present that in May, and occasionally they send it out and then turn around and change it. We've gotten notices right like on board day that, we miscalculated several things and here you go, here's your new number. So that's an interesting one. That's why usually, I have a spreadsheet. Several of us finance officers all share. It's just developed by somebody that really knew the formula way prior to me, and we share in that spreadsheet and we keep it updated, and we make projections the best we can. So as we get more data to the pieces, I can even start making our own projections, which is usually what I have to do to start the budgeting process for the tentative budget. And then I get the number in time to finalize it in order to report to you all. Page 23 starts our FSPK Nichols funds. Again, the only changes I really made in this was to account for our bond payments that go out of that. So I had to change the fund transfers out. Page 26 starts your debt service fund. That budget has been updated to reflect what our bond payment schedule is for next year for all of our bond payments that we currently have. Moving on down, page 29 starts food service. We didn't make a whole lot of changes in there. There was very little effect from the CERS rate throughout. So we're kind of holding that to help offset some of our expenditures for food because we have had some increased expenditures there. So we'll finalize that when we do the tentative budget and get it a little more in line with where we see the year ending. So with that, I will open it up for you to ask any more questions you would like on this budget.
Bond payments on the new middle school won't start till we actually close on that.
Correct.
So that's not reflected.
Correct. It's usually, so when we do a bond, we pay some upfront interest. It's just like a home, you know, when you take out your mortgage, they put upfront interest to build that in. So the way it's built is so that we can get off the ground, get a building going and everything. You take out your bond and it's usually the following fiscal year, depending on when it happens. If it happens early in our school year, then we may have to make an interest payment before June 30th. But if it happens more towards mid-year when we sell the bonds, then it's usually the start of the new school year before we pay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Suppose you do.
Y'all bear with me. So, no other questions, and I need to get a motion to approve the 2023-2024 draft budget as presented with a general fund of $120,856,967.12, district activity fund of $1,030,513.83, capital outlay fund of $1,076,000, FSPK $15,635,130, debt service of $11,821,937.55, and food service of $15,166,753.75. Can I get a motion to approve the 23-24 draft budget as presented?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rutherford. Second by Ms. Cobb. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Any comments from the board?
I just want people to understand this draft budget, we're going to see it like two more times before we get to the end. This is just Mark rolling the dice and trying to figure out the best he can what we're going to look like. So these are just numbers that we've basically went over the last few years and he's put together, so.
Like you said, we really don't have all the
Yeah.
information to even do it.
He's used his magic 8 ball to try to find some of these numbers out, so.
Well, and I commend Mark and his staff because they always do such a good job, and especially on their projections. It's always helpful as we work through this. They're experts at doing this, and I know it requires a tremendous amount of work, so we appreciate it. Anything else? Well, if I could get a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Coyle.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Cobb, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.